Hey everybody, and welcome to part 2 of my Mame collection. Just to review a little bit, Mame and just small trees, even Shohin, have some great benefits. They're small enough where you can put a lot in a small space, whereas larger trees take up so much more room. They're usually much less expensive, all things being equal. A pot this size by the same manufacturer is going to be much less expensive than a pot 8 inches or 10 inches or 12 inches. Needs much less soil. They're much more mobile, much easier to move around than some of my larger trees. In fact, some of my larger trees I can't even move, except maybe dragging them along the bench. But lifting them up and moving them, impossible, at least for me. So Mames have a lot of positives, but they do have some challenges. They're so small that you've got to get the proportionality of the branching and the movement and the taper right, or else they just don't look good. So the design of Mame is a little bit more challenging. If a large tree has a branch that's an inch too high, okay, who cares? A tree that's 24 inches high and wide with a branch that's not perfectly in place, no one's ever going to notice. A tree like this with a branch that's not perfectly in place, it can be glaring. They're also, I don't want to say more difficult to care for, but they take more attention. They can dry out much more quickly than a large tree, and there's a lot of factors involved with that. If your large tree is really root bound, doesn't necessarily mean that it won't dry out faster than one of these guys that's just been repotted. But in general, smaller trees with a smaller amount of soil are going to be more prone to drying more quickly. But they're just so much fun. I love my Mame trees. They're just so much fun to play with. And so this is part 2, and I'm going to do another 6 trees, and we will have part 3 because I got even more. All right, so this first guy is another Premna, and you may be seeing a trend. You say, man, this guy's got a lot of Premna. And Premna are just tough plants. And when I use the word tough, I mean like strong, not hardy. Hardy, botanically, simply means able to withstand cold. And so Premna are not hardy at all. They're tender. Freezing kills them. And I've got proof of that. But they're tough. And like this, look at this guy. Okay, he's in this pot, but he's just kind of like wobbling in there. And look at all the brand new roots. Just beautiful white roots from the rain we've had. And does it care that it's just sitting there almost in midair? No. It's growing like crazy. Now I will admit that you see this scar right here? This guy right there? That used to be the whole tree. That's right. There was nothing. This didn't even exist, and the whole tree was up into here, and it all died back. Why? Probably because I let it get too dry. But I did the scratch test, and it seemed like it was still alive. And my philosophy on trees that look dead, but there's still some potential for them to resprout, is just wait. Just give them usually a few weeks. Usually within a month, if a tree has not resprouted after looking like it has died completely, then it probably has died completely. But this guy did sprout, and for some unknown reason, I never have cleaned up the old scar. So it's pretty interesting. This tree has really beautiful nabari. It's got fantastic taper. Goes from much thicker to thinner to thinner. But it needs some work. And of course the first work, so probably the most glaring thing that it needs is this branch right here that's shooting straight across the trunk. You never want that, because that just You see how much cleaner the trunk is going to be just when we remove that. And now we've got much better view of the trunk line. And then, as in part one, it just needs to have all of the rangy growth cut back so it's more in line with the form of the tree. And you see it already has a little piece of wire that I used to bring this branch down. But if we look at this tree with the pot right now, and I know I've got it off to the right again. I don't know, maybe I should just move the camera to the right. I think I will. Just move the camera to the right. And then put the pot right there. Okay. And the front is okay, but I really think a better front is going to be about right there. So it will bring, typically the convention says that the first main branches want to be at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So if we look like this, and we look at the front now, this one's at about 2 o'clock, but this one's at like 9. You know, it's just going way too far straight. It needs to be coming forward. So I really don't want to bring it forward. We can just change the front, and I think that just makes a much nicer front. And we can remove some leaves. So I think that's going to be the future front when this guy gets root pruned and repotted. And that won't be today. This is just kind of an overview of 6 more trees and cutting them back to keep them in shape. So that's about it for this guy. It really is a phenomenal tree, that in the fact that the whole thing died and that this has all resprouted. And of course I've styled it. Once it resprouted, then I let certain branches grow and took certain branches off and created a whole new tree. Okay, this one here is also just a phenomenal tree. Not in the fact that it's styled like some unbelievable style. In fact, it's actually about as ugly as any of the rest of them. And I may try to change that today. Give it more of a look, like it looks like an actual bonsai. But this is a sea hibiscus. And you see how small these leaves are? Now we've got some new growth here, and these leaves kind of got a little too big. And I laugh, I say a little too big, because I'm going to go get you a leaf, a mature leaf of a sea hibiscus. So I'm so embarrassed because the big monster tree that I had growing in the ground, where I used to take the largest leaves I could find, I cut it way back, and it's just really just starting to regrow. So it doesn't have any really huge leaves. So I found the biggest one I could, because I have some others growing in various areas around the yard. But anyway, so here's, and this is only about half as big as they get. And I know I have a video comparing a much, much larger, the actual true size of a mature leaf to this guy. And I would try to stick it right there so you can click on that and see. This is only about half the size of a truly mature leaf. But even this, compared to the size of these guys, is just absolutely phenomenal. So that's why I say this is a phenomenal tree. It's just unbelievable how small the leaves have become. And I suppose I could do a little wiring on this guy too. This guy so far has been entirely clip and grow. And I've never really determined a front. To tell the honest truth, I've just been super happy that the thing is still alive. I mean, this is just amazing. How a tree that normally gets massive in nature can stay in this little tiny pot. And he's been in here for about 2 years now. Maybe longer. So I'm just going to play around a little bit. Basically, just going to bring these 2 branches down. I'm going to bring this guy down, and we're going to bring this guy down. And just doing that will make it look more like what I want my bonsai to look like. I'm use the same piece of wire, and this wire is way too long, but that's okay. It'll just stick out some. Which I can forgive myself for. I could have rummaged through my old wire and found, the perfect piece, but really? Look at it, stayed in the frame. Okay, so there we go, instant bonsai. But this guy's just so cool. I love this guy. I mean, it's just so amazing how small the leaves are, especially since I took those other two quote-unquote large ones. So sea hibiscus, also called maho. And it is a type of hibiscus. It produces a hibiscus flower, but never as a bonsai because you're constantly pinching it off. In order to form a flower, the branches need to elongate considerably. So there's the next one. So let's do the tripod. Okay, budget bonsai is a potter. And oh my god, look how little it is. Maybe we should zoom in. I mean, he got this idea to create very small pots. I'm not sure if these are called pinch pots. But the reason they're called a tripod is because they have 3 feet. Oh no, my fertilizer is escaping. And so he sent many of these pots to different bonsai artists, and they've all put a little tree in there. And I chose a Lilliput Portulacaria jade. And it has grown. It's growing beautifully. And we already have the beginnings of branch number 1. So that's pretty cool. Lilliput is, I think, the very smallest dwarf jade that there is. Why am I off to the right again? You just have to tilt your head. I don't know. Anyway. And this tree is actually growing quite nicely. It is another one that has suffered a little bit of erosion from rainfall coming off the leaves of the tree that it's below. So if there's a leaf like right here, let me zoom back out. Okay, so there's a leaf right here, and then the water's going to drip off that leaf. And sometimes they can just, in heavy rain, it can actually just, it's kind of like the old Folgers coffee commercials. They can just pop the soil right out, just bang. Slams into the pot and the soil goes jettisoning. So he needs a little more soil. But pretty cool little tree. And I'm going to give this guy probably another 1/2 inch to grow. And then I will pinch it in the theory that the next growth will come this way. So we'll have a nice little informal upright. So that's the tripod challenge. What should we do? Let's do a couple more Premna. This one here is like, why did I even put this in a pot? Yeah, I guess it's okay. The Bari this is another one where the soil has eroded considerably. And it's almost always the same thing. It's just, look, the leaves of the tree. There it is, positive proof it's underneath a tree. So where do we go with this? Well, another thing, on April 28th of 2023, we had a hailstorm. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a massive scar right there. And that was the tree. And once again, it just knocked the whole thing off. So I had to start over. And I've never really been in love with this guy. I just haven't. And believe me, you fall in love with your trees if you do it long enough. They're as important to you as a pet. And depending on how much of a jerk they are, even your children, you can love your trees more than your children. Oh, God, that was bad. Anyway, should I edit that out? Hell no. So, what do we do with this guy? Someone tell me, because I don't know. I really don't. But it's here. It's there. And once again, you notice how all the leaves are going the other direction? If we spin it like this, they're all coming at you like this. That's that differential growth. It was planted with the sun, not planted, but positioned on the bench with the sun coming from here. And so they need to be spun regularly to keep that more in check. So if I spin it like this, if the sun is here and it was growing like that, then if you spin it around, then everything will go back to the sun. So I've never really looked at this as the front. I've always looked at this as the front. And I suppose there could be other fronts in here. You know, I don't know, could we just take everything off here and turn it into some kind of weird little thing like that? Or could we take this off completely and have a long first branch and bring the apex up into here? That's another possibility. So right now there's a level of confusion on this tree that's okay. I mean, alright. So, some things I do know is that I want to keep, and this guy really hasn't elongated like some of them. Like the next one I'm going to show you, the comparison of the elongation. This one really hasn't elongated much at all. And of course I work these trees off camera. So I don't video every single time I work on every one of my trees. So I may have cut this guy back more recently than the next one I'm going to show you, which is why it doesn't have. So I don't know, this could almost be like one of those African acacias, you know, where bring it up like this and then have just all the foliage way high. So at this point though, God, look how dirty the pot is. And not no little thumb in water. Can't. And of course, you know, when you go to a bonsai show and you see trees in all their finery, that's where they are. They're in all their finery. So the pot has been cleaned and spit shined, whatever you call it. And in my own personal collection, if the pot's a little dirty, all right, well, pot's a little dirty. Okay, here's the next one. I have to laugh. How overgrown it is. Now this is a sumo. This is an interesting pot. A friend of mine gave me this pot, but it was missing 2 legs. This one here was missing completely, and this one here is truncated. And so I put, this is like an epoxy weld to make another foot. And we don't need it aesthetically because we have the 2 feet that are in the front. This is the front of the tree, so you see the 2 feet. But this is a sumo. Look at the trunk chop on this thing. I mean, absolutely massive trunk chop. So this tree was probably 18 inches, maybe even 2 feet high. And I chopped it back to just a stub. And now it's grown beautifully. And of course it has way, way, way too much elongated growth. So we're going to start taking it off. And I've got to start taking it off before I even look at what's going on with the rest of the tree. Take all that stuff off. Just doing this is going to make it look so much nicer. There we go. Look at that guy. He's so cool. And the roots, killer Nabari. Okay, so now let's try to study this guy a little more. Okay, see this branch right here, am I moving off to the right? Has just emerged, and I'm not really sure I want it. Then we have, there's our trunk line, which is really cool. So I'm not sure about that branch. It could be branch number 1 and then take this one off because it's kind of too parallel with branch number 2. And I want to keep this as a true sumo, and well, it's almost impossible to do a true sumo because a true sumo is defined as a tree that's as tall as the trunk is wide. So this tree, well, I still have my tape measure from part 1. So this tree is about 2.5 inches high, and the trunk is about 1.5 inches. So the trunk needs to be 1 inch thicker for it to be a true sumo. However, it's still a cool little tree. And just taking some of that off and opening up the trunk line. And once again, sometimes just one leaf can make the difference. I know Jim Smith taught me that. So that's just a cool little tree. Even with the gimpy legs on the pot. And another leaf. So very cool tree. Massive trunk chop. And this is a Premna. And once again, you have to know your material. If you want to do trunk chops like that, there are a whole bunch of different trees that will respond with new growth. He's just cool. I love this guy. And then last but not least of this 6 is another sumo. And that is a Portulacaria jade sumo. God, he's like disappeared. Another very cool tree. I love the Nabari on this guy. Check out that Nabari. And you see the back has a lot of damage. And many years ago, the original damage was from squirrels eating. They love Portulacaria, and I had them on a bench that was attached to a fence, and the squirrels used the fence as a highway. So they would just crawl down the fence and eat the trees when it got dry. They're succulents. Squirrels need some water. Let's munch on some Portulacaria. You know, and I was incensed. And they did ruin some trees where they just created so much reverse taper, and they would just, they just were never going to be good bonsai. But others, they actually created some very interesting scarring that I've been able to incorporate. Anyway, and there's another huge chop right here. I mean, this guy here is just massive where I cut off. And Portulacaria do this. When they scar, they have it's almost like a scab. And that scab is ready to come off now. But I really don't want to accentuate that scar. I want to accentuate the roots. So this is the front. And I'm really thinking branch here, apex, and then we have this stuff here. And I'm not entirely sure that I want to wire it down to be first main branch because I've got this guy right here. And I've taken it off to the right yet again. God. Okay, this guy right here. So what I am going to do is I'm going to shorten all of this. In an attempt to get this guy to elongate and fill that in. And I still may keep some of this around to fill it in. But he's just so cool. And jays make great sumo because they're another tough plant. Probably the most drought tolerant bonsai you can grow. And they can take massive trunk chops. They can take massive root prunes. They root where you can just throw them onto the dirt, and if a piece is touching the dirt, it'll root. But they just won't take cold. They must be kept from freezing or they will die. But I just love this guy. So that's it. 6 more Mame. And actually the pinch pot, the Budget Bonsai Tripot Challenge pot could be considered in the even smaller category. There is a smaller category than Mame, and right off the top of my head I don't know what it is, but I think, well, all bonsai names in Japanese translate into English based on how many hands it takes to pick it up. I'm not joking. So there's 1-hand bonsai, there's 2-hand bonsai, there's 4-hand bonsai, there's 6-hand bonsai, and of course, assuming that we all have 2 hands, an 8-hand bonsai is 4 people to lift the thing. That's how heavy they are. Big, giant trees. So a 1-hand bonsai is a little bit bigger than a shohin, but you can still pick it up with 1 hand. And then shohin are, do I have any shohins just sitting around close enough to grab? Not really. And then Mame literally means little bean. So they're tiny little guys. And of course, you can pick this guy up with just 2 fingers. And I do believe that that is the Japanese translation. Let me bring him back up here. And well, I guess I'm zoomed in already. The Japanese translation of pots this small is fingertip bonsai. So you just need your fingertips to lift them up. And, I mean, any of these guys could be fingertip bonsai. But, you can just see just how much bigger some of these guys are than the tripod. Oops. Let's zoom out a little bit. There we go. So Mame presents some challenges, but they are just so much fun to play with. And when you do get a nice tree that you really enjoy and the branching, and it's just so fulfilling. It's just so much fun. And I'm looking forward to this guy actually creating, a much denser tree with nice branching. And so there you go. Let's put the sumo guy back here. How about both sumos? Sumo Jade and the Sumo Premna. And you can see how similar they are. So there's part 2, and I'm going to do part 3 because I have more. I have more Mame. And I have a lot. All these 6 trees, these 12 trees that I just showed you, are all in exactly the same place. They're all within about a 2 to 3 square foot area of my bench. But then I've got some other portulacarias that are sort of scattered around on other benches. So I'm going to round those up and do part 3. So thanks for watching part 2. I will leave a link to part 1 at the end of this video. So if you're curious, you can watch that. And if you haven't subscribed already, you can subscribe and continue watching the journey of these little guys and all my trees. And so that's it for part 2. So thank you so much for watching.